Welcome back, everyone. We're at the noon hour here on the East Coast, and I'm excited about this panel. These are rare dads that have said that they would come together and share some of their story and what's going on with them as being a rare dad and in the rare disease community. Joining us today, right now on the panel, is Christopher. He is in Philadelphia. Christopher, and I'm gonna have trouble with your last name. It's D. I apologize for that. And then we have Christopher Valona who's in LA, and we have David Ross, who is in the UK. Hopefully, we'll be joined by another panelist. His name is Tintin, and he's in Zimbabwe. He's running just a little behind, but hopefully he will join us as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christopher. I want to have you guys introduce yourselves, talk about the rare diseases that you all are involved with as a rare dad, and then we'll come back and we'll have you tell your stories.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me. Like 12 years participating, and all panelists that I get to speak with today, Christopher, David. So I'm Christopher D. Felice. I'm a father of a child with a rare disease called Prader-Willi syndrome. I co-founded a company with my wife, Maria Picconi, who some of you might have heard speak before or speak earlier this week, called Trend Community. So I'm father of three with all this with Prader-Willi syndrome. And basically, Prader-Willi syndrome, it's a genetic disorder, and it has a slew of symptoms. But if you were to look it up online, you just basically read about hyperphagia, which is this phase where the children or patients with PWS lose this sense of satiation. They use that cue that kind of tells you, like, hey, I'm full. I had dinner and my body is satiated, it's good enough. And they kind of lose that trigger at some point during the course of their life where, they don't have that mechanism anymore, and they start to just, feel those kind of hunger pains or those hunger strikes, throughout the day, regardless of, how much food they consumed. And that's pretty much how the disease is defined. I don't think it's really defined for my daughter or my family. We, like I said, when we get to my story, our journey has been a little bit different, and we've had a lot of other challenges that we face with our daughter. She's born low tone, so we struggle with a lot of things with, her hips, certain physical milestones, like walking were, challenges for her, certain things like dexterity in her hands due to low tone. There's some cognitive disabilities related to these kids or patients. Our daughter has definitely had some issues in certain areas, but where her weaknesses are, she usually develops strengths in other areas. So like, she's 8 years old today, and when she might struggle with math, she does incredibly well with reading. She's got a vocabulary of a 15-year-old, and I sometimes I have to I do a double take when I get sassed by my 8-year-old, every morning when she's busting my chops. But as a father of a rare disease, it's kind of, like I said, with her, it's challenges we face on a daily basis, weekly basis, and you kind of pick and choose those battles, and you try best to support and try to help her, get over those hurdles as best you can. It's not, it's challenging, but you try to find those times too where you can kind of step away from the fact that you're dealing with this disease, and just I have a little girl that I'm trying to also raise and prepare her for the world as well. So that's a quick bit. I'm going to end it there, and I'll let everyone else go up and here.
All right, Christopher Valona, tell us about yourself real quickly.
Good morning, gentlemen. Christopher Valona, Los Angeles, California. I am resident here to Batten disease. My son is suffering from Batten disease CLN8, which is the variant on the 14 known variants inside this same disease. And basically, I'm here to offer support and to help other dads understand that there's a community out there and willing to support and to share information and to connect. Oftentimes, the dads, in my experience, they're not present. They they basically bounce out. They leave the family, leaving the wife or the girlfriend or everyone else to handle the mess, which is extremely challenging. So, extremely important for the men to collaborate just like the women do. And I know it's extremely hard because it's not what men do. We don't show emotion, and we're fixers, and we don't do anything except get angry and break stuff. But I'm here to tell you that together, if we share, just our journey, our story, then those things become a little bit easier to manage, and that we're able to help each other by supporting each other wherever we are. And that's why I'm here today to tell you a little bit about my story and to give support wherever necessary. That's about it for me right now, and we'll probably get more when we get some more specific questions. So thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Christopher. David, tell us a little bit about yourself in the UK.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah. Hi. Yeah. I'm David. I'm from the UK. I was diagnosed with my rare disease over 3.5 years ago. I got a letter from my mother telling me to give this to the doctors should I want to be tested. About 5 years ago, must have been now 5-6 years ago. So it wasn't until unfortunately she passed away. I thought I'd better get tested, which I did about a year later after she passed, and was found to have the same condition. So I've got a daughter, and that's the option of getting her tested, and we talked it through with our genetic counsellor, and we decided she want to get her tested. So my rare disease is Cowden syndrome, and it is a rare condition, 1 in 200,000, although it's thought to be underdiagnosed, and it gives you the increased risk of getting certain cancers, thyroid, renal, colon, and for women, breast and endometrial. So, and as well as that, it's also linked to developmental delays, autism. So, yeah, so we got her tested. Unfortunately, she was okay. So the things we have to deal with are kind of like balancing. It's kind of different, really, because my daughter's healthy, which is good, but obviously she's impacted by doctor's appointments, advocacy, as well as balancing that alongside a normal life, really, a normal family life, dealing with her being a teenager. So I suppose the challenges are different for me, but yeah, that's kind of my basic introduction for now.
Thanks, David. And then we have Tintin, who is in Zimbabwe. Tintin, how are you today? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I'm hoping you can hear me loud and clear.
We can hear you.
All right. It's about 7 p.m. on this part of the world, and it's cold, and it was so cloudy, so that's why I have the jerseys and the scarves on. Anyway, my name is Tintin. Just to make life easy for you, there's this complicated name on my screen there. Don't worry about it. Just cut it short to Tin, Tin. How am I a rare dad? I was born with a rare disease myself. It's an anorectal malformation known as imperforate anus. That means when I was a baby, I was born with no anal opening. I had to go through a lot of surgery for an artificial opening to be created by surgeons. The misfortunate part that happened with me is I had a wrong diagnosis as I was growing up. They had told me that I have hernia, so I was busy studying, going for the wrong diagnosis. And then I got to meet a group of people online that were experiencing the same problems I was experiencing. My main problem was incontinence. ever since, even in my school days and in my adult years. I think I really got liberated somewhere in 2016, 2017, thereabout. That's when I decided to join the rare disease family via my organization called Rare Diseases and Disabilities Africa Foundation. And about a month ago, a couple of weeks ago, I had an underlying problem. I was diagnosed to be bipolar with narcissistic tendencies, with narcissistic personality disorders. So that's an underlying issue that was caused by how I grew up and my problem. Back to you, Jeff.
Thanks, Tintin. Really appreciate it joining. So, each of us are facing, I know, like, I have a rare disease daughter, and two of our other kids have just recently shown characteristics of potential rare disorders. Our son has had some that have popped up, but they're currently undiagnosed. Cambria, though, she was originally diagnosed with panhypopituitarism through a genetic deficiency disorder that caused her pituitary gland to not fully form. So she doesn't make growth hormone, but the other thing is she doesn't make any hormones. So when she was 4 months old, she nearly died. And that was the start of her journey. So I relate to how, the struggles that people have and what's going on. Let's start off. I would like you to share, and it's going to be kind of hard to keep it 5 minutes. I know you've talked a little bit about it, but share a little bit about the journey that you did, when you found out about either your diagnosis or your child's diagnosis, and what that has been. I really want you to share kind of that story. And I know that you could probably talk quite a bit to it, but, tell us a little bit about what you went through. And I don't even care to say, share some of those emotions that you have, because these are our kids, or this is ourselves, or it's about how it impacts your family. But talk to that just a little bit. Christopher Valona, let's start with you this time, and talk to us about, Sebastian and what took place there.
Right. So, basically, normal childhood, ages 0 to like about 5, normal birth, everything was great. No abnormalities in any testing, everything was great. Had our first seizure in about 5 years old on a vacation. It was very scary. We're in Maui, and we had to, take him to Maui General, which is on the other side of the island. Thank God there was an ambulance in the hotel parking lot treating another patient, so it was very lucky. And after hours and hours of deliberating, they said it was just a febrile seizure because he didn't eat and he got in a hot tub and he was excited, and so they said this happens all the time, don't worry about it. So then we had another one 6 months later, and then another one, and then we went to see a neurologist, and they basically diagnosed him with epilepsy. So that was the first diagnosis, and had a copious amounts of different drugs with tremendous amount of side effects, which was just awful, as if the seizure wasn't bad enough, So we started seeing a deterioration in his eyesight, his fine motor skills, his balance, his eating habits, his speech. And at first we thought that these were the pharmaceutical companies, poisoning the child. Parents go to that drama, we just were angry. And come to find out after, having one of our friends who's a neurologist who took over the case at UCLA simply said, let's just genetically test him. This is not side effects that come from pharmaceuticals. And we found out that he was properly diagnosed with Batten disease. And at that time, the geneticist team basically said that there's no hope, there's no cure, go home, try to have the best years of your life, because there's nothing anybody's doing that is going to be applicable in this lifetime, which is just destructive, but at that time I was already deep within the thralls of a divorce. and it was just challenging. And what do you do? What do you do? You're riddled with fear. Child doesn't know anything. You're just trying to figure it out. And so instead of leaving it up to the science and leaving it up to others, we decided to fight back and create awareness and to create foundation after foundation after foundation, fundraise, and then connect with other families and other foundations and really learn about this horrible disease. And to really find some sort of a pathway to either a treatment or a cure. And of course, you're completely distracted with taking care of a child as he's slowly, just fading away in front of you. His cognitive abilities is just gone, and it was really challenging, guys. I mean, I'm sure you all can relate on some level to watch your son deteriorate, your daughter deteriorate with nothing you can do, and so you just keep connecting, you keep talking to people, and boom, you find somebody that's actually doing something. You're actually on the right path. You find someone that says, we're not waiting for medical science. We're just going to do it, and we're going to roll the dice, and we're going to save our children. And that's what we found. We found another family in the CLN6 category of this disease who was doing a gene therapy replacement. And, nothing new, but never been applied to Batten disease. So what we found out is that it had stopped the progression of the disease, but that still was prevalent, and so we still needed a cure. So connecting with other CLNs, as they say, 1 through 14, everybody's trying to do the same thing that we are, collectively save our children and to provide enough awareness to raise enough, ideas that it's okay to have clinical trials and your children may not live past it, but the science is valuable and that you need to try. You just need to do something. I was never on that page to watch my child just deteriorate and go from a walking cane to a wheelchair to a bed to a box. I couldn't see it, and I didn't want it. So you do what you do. You either, fight or flight, which is what we all do. And I decided to fight, and others decided to fly. So I said, I'm here. So, and in this situation, when you decide to fight for your children in a rare disease category whose, impending death is coming quickly, you can't have a normal job. You can't work in corporate America. You can't you have friends. You can't have a life because your life is now about this child, like David had alluded to earlier. And people don't understand that. And that's okay, so you get help. You ask for help, and that's very hard to do. As men, it's very hard to do as men. We're supposed to be strong. We're supposed to be the providers. We're supposed to be the earners. We're supposed to provide the money. But these children don't care about that. They just want your time, because time is all they have. So I've dedicated my life to curing Batten disease. And I'm okay now more so than ever with the treatments that are out there that they may or may not save my son's life, but they will help others. And I have to pivot and look at that down the road. You have to get out of self and you have to help others achieve that with you in order to move that science needle. So currently we're waiting for our turn for gene therapy replacement for CNL8, and that's supposed to be coming later on this year for Sebastian and a few other children that are been invited to this, potential treatment, which may stave off this horrible disease a little bit more longer until, people much smarter than me can figure out a cure. So that's where I'm at today, and it's nice to be a part of this panel. It's nice to see other men struggling with me. I know that sounds weird, but I feel comfortable telling you that because I know you all feel that way at times. I think it's great what you're doing, Jeff, and I appreciate each and every one of you that's listening and that will participate in recovery.
Thanks, Christopher. It's always great, to hear. Thank you for sharing. David, in the UK, Tell us a little bit about your story. I think you're still muted, man. Yeah, we still can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So my story starts off with a letter from my mother, as I said earlier. She had the same condition as me, and it was with instructions. Should I want to get tested, which I needed to give to the doctor. So at the time, I was kind of like too busy, sort of living my own life. I kind of felt healthy and appeared healthy. Some sort of denial around my mother's declining health and wanting to really kind of look at the letter properly. So it was only till after she passed away that I got tested. So and when I did, it was quite supportive, really. I had a genetic counsellor who talked me through the process. So I had all the right information, and to make sure I was about 100% sure about what I was doing. And she was always very good at, like, it's your choice, it's your decision. So when the test came up as me having the same rare condition, it was also discussed about the option of getting my daughter tested. And at that point, I had a mixture of emotions, really, ranging from feeling scared, angry, unsure, and lost. I mean, I'm not long lost my mother. I found out I got the same thing, and possibly my daughter might have had it, might have the same condition. So, and what I did know about the disease, and obviously saw with my own mother, was it affects women more than men. They suffer with breast cancer and endometrial. So, yeah, I kind of felt like if we had the option of getting my daughter tested, I should do. So we did, but fortunately, she was found to not have the same condition, which was obviously a big relief. But I think, like, at the time, the diagnosis took me away from day-to-day family life a bit, in the sense of a support group, and also getting my own head around all the new information, hospital appointments. It was kind of like something, kind of a big change, really. So I felt that at this point I had to kind of start again and kind of refocus my own life, which I probably say it took some time to do, really. But with the health situation, the bereavement, as mentioned, and yeah, I had to give myself time for that. So personally, time for me to sort of adjust all that. Not long after that, really, I started to get connected with other rare disease people, and this gave me more of an understanding about what people were going through, and also a start of a support network. I think as a family, we were starting to find some identity with it, though. When we were invited to patient days, and also I got the chance of taking part in a clinical trial at Boston Children's Hospital for my rare disease. So I'm to take my daughter 2 times out of 8 visits, which also includes a patient symposium in the USA for my rare condition. Another rare disease family, which kind of isn't mentioned really in trials. The importance of, yes, you've got to travel far if you're able to do that, but the emotional impact and reward of meeting a family and sharing similar things, and kind of having that sort of a rare disease community. So it felt like, at that point, it felt like there was something positive that was going on out of wading through all the things around being diagnosed. And I was kind of, I don't know, gaining more strength and confidence within myself. Yeah, and it kind of, at that point, it kind of felt a good point in terms of my, but also, I would say it was taking over the normal day-to-day family life, which I think is hard to.
We might have lost David's connection. It looks like he froze up. Yeah. 1010, are you still able to hear us? All right. Let's, David, off there. 1010, go ahead and tell us. I know you told us a little bit about your diagnosis, but I know you also have had some challenges in growing up. But talk a little bit about your story and share a little bit about that with everyone.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. First of all, for the platform and for affording me to be part of this Rare Dads edition that you're having. Like I alluded to earlier on, in my part of the world, rare diseases are labeled as things that are a result of witchcraft or curses from the gods. So I grew up from a place where I was hidden at first by my mom, because back in the day, if you were born with a missing limb or a missing body part, you would be said you are not supposed to live. So when I had a chit chat with my mom, who's her birthday today, by the way, she said we had to hide you for a while, and because of imperforate anus, I used to have a colostomy bag. That means that I was going to the loo via my belly. Now, what is a big challenge for me right now is there are these children and these parents that reach out to me in today's era where they want to have surgery and they cannot afford to have surgery. The best that I can do for them is console them and tell them that I was born with a rare disease, I grew up, but my local physicians, they normally say because the rare disease affects 1 in 5,000 births. They normally say I'm one of the few, if not the only adult that they have noticed who has grown up to an age of 35. So in my advocacy work now, when I advocate for rare diseases in an Africa where people are preoccupied by COVID, people are preoccupied by HIV and AIDS, I come from a place of hurt, because sometimes you don't have anyone to listen to you. The powers that be, the people in ministries of health and stuff, they turn a blind eye, and all they do is to just listen to you because you are in front of them at the time. When you move out of their office, you are regarded as a nothing. So it hurts, because a lot of African people, especially in my country, are affected by anorectal malformations, Gaucher disease, DSDs, where kids are born with, 2 different genitalia, all of that. So it's platforms like these that I network and get to be revitalized and rejuvenated, to keep on pushing and keep on advocating and keep on being an activist, because in our part of the world, rare diseases are still regarded as next to nothing. So it's just fighting against the tide and keep on keeping on. Like what what Chris said, it's either you fight or you fly. But I'm gonna fight, and I'm in there. Some people say I'm looking for attention. and people say all sorts of nasty things because rare diseases are not a topic that was being openly talked about in my country. So I feel like it's me against the whole world, literally, because people close to in my system and who would have the capacity to push a rare disease agenda, they tend not to do that because it's labeled as a curse from the devil or curse from the gods or witchcraft. So I am that person that is labeled to be a result of witchcraft. So that is what is hurtful the most in this path that I'm taking. But it's people like Jeff and people like you guys that say no, keep on keeping on. It's genetics issues, it's issues that have to do with genes and all of that. And the few doctors that specialize in these things, they go overseas to get greener pastures. So we don't have people that can say, indeed, they are rare disease patients. A lot of people to date, they say, I'm an attention seeker who's trying to use something that's not popular to gain popularity. So you can imagine when you're having that backlash from your fellow countrymen, it truly hurts. It truly hurts. But I'm still here and I fight on, like what the first speaker said. Yes, Jeff.
Thanks, Tintin. You're always inspiring to talk to. Christopher, tell us about what's going on in Philadelphia with your family and your journey that you've had.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. First, thanks to Chris and Tintin for sharing their stories. Happy birthday to your mother, Tintin. I think we don't view it as witchcraft, but I don't think it's severe, but basically when you have a child, you don't have a normal child when they have a rare disease. We lose there's a stigma, so to speak, not to the level as you were illustrating. So I'm not going to try to compare it that way, but I definitely some of your story resonates a bit, and even though I'm a panelist, I'm still I glean and gathered so much from what you both shared in your stories alone. So just for me, this is just valuable being on hearing your stories. So I do want to thank you guys for sharing because it is incredibly difficult. Going over my story and my journey, my wife and I's journey in our introduction into rare disease. We have 3 children. We have 3 annoying children. I love them to death, but they drive me nuts. Our first child has a rare disease. So, for me, fatherhood for me was rare disease and not just going through, I guess, some other experiences that my friends have experienced with their children. So, we had a very typical pregnancy, leading up to it. Everything was, like kind of how you envisioned it growing up. And, as you're getting older, we had the nursery all set up, my wife was all set on doing a natural pregnancy, no drugs. I thought she was crazy. And the day comes when she's, going into labor and we go to the hospital and things are going, the way as we envisioned they were going to be going, exhaustion, a lot of yelling. I couldn't do anything right. And this progressed on for 10 to 12 to 16, 18 hours of it. And, I'm like, please, let's get through this. And we're at the point where I feel like we're getting close. The doctor's saying we're getting close. And all of a sudden, like the master alarm went off. And essentially, just chaos ensued. The doctor's sitting there over my wife, and she just calls one of their code colors, whatever it was, magenta or whatever it is. And the flock of nurses and other practitioners come flying into the room, wheel my wife off, and I felt like, I'm standing in this room by myself. I kind of feel like the tumbleweeds are going by, and I'm like, what the heck just happened? My wife is gone. She's taken away, and like 20 minutes later, somebody comes and grabs me, and they're like, we're sorry, we had to do an emergency C-section. We had to put your wife under. Your child had to be resuscitated. She's breathing. She's alive. You can, after a while, you can come and see her once we get her, settled down and stuff. So, haven't seen my wife. Fast forward a little bit. I get to see my daughter. I mean, most amazing experience of my life. You know, she's just this, as most babies are very kind of like crunched up in a ball, so she's just this long, you know, colored string bean laying on the table. She was 23 inches long, super tall. She's just staring at me. I mean, you know, greatest moment of my life. You know, but they're like, listen, you know, you have a few minutes with her. We have to get her to NICU. And I'm like, what do you mean we get her to NICU? Well, it's standard procedure for, you know, children that were, you know, we had to do an emergency C-section for. I'm like, okay, that's fine. They bring her to the NICU. I go with her. They get it all set up. I finally go up to see my wife, who finally wakes up, you know, and here I am. I feel terrible because my wife, you know, goes to sleep, gets knocked out with a child in her belly, and wakes up with no child in her belly, right, and can't even see her. I think they made her wait 48 hours before she can actually see her daughter. I'd go down to the NICU and take videos and share them with her in the meantime. But, you know, so anyways, we're in the NICU for a while. My wife, as crazy as she is, you know, was walking around and moving around the next day after her C-section because she was adamant about getting downstairs to see her ASAP. But the doctors, you know, noticed some things that were off. You know, they noticed a lot of low tone around her neck and shoulders. She was sans any type of emotion. So as you used to, you know, a newborn, right? You hear that screaming, that crying, right, when they're hungry, or, you know, there was none of that. You know, there was just no emotion from her because the low tone wouldn't allow her to kind of, you know, make the, you know, exhibit those emotions and stuff. So they started running a gauntlet of tests for her, you know, neurology tests. I mean, you name it, you know, test after test, it's coming back negative. You know, and to the doctor's credit, I mean, we were very fortunate that they were very adamant about doing it. I will say, you know, I'm grateful for the neonatologist, like very adamant about making sure we had a diagnosis. I mean, sometimes though, when he said he wanted to put a bow on it, I felt like some of his bows weren't the typical Christmas bow that he was kind of illustrating. I'm like, you know, it's kind of more of like, I think it felt like you were describing a noose to me because I felt like I was being suffocated with some of the things they were throwing at us. But anyway, you know, our daughter was born on October 12th, and on October 22nd, 10 days later, you know, we were officially introduced, you know, across the invisible void into the rare disease world. So we were actually getting ready to leave the NICU. So at this point, they were already tube feeding her through an NG tube, a nasogastric tube, because she was having a hard enough time feeding on her own. She was, and in all credit to my daughter, she was really trying to breastfeed and she was latching. She just didn't have enough strength to really get enough sustenance to feed herself. So we had to supplement through a tube, which, you know, through this NG tube. But they, you know, they trained us on how to do it, and we were getting ready to leave, and, you know, two doctors come walking up to us, and needless to say, we you know, before they even said anything, you see on their face what it was, but they pulled us aside, and, you know, they gave us a diagnosis. They did their best to break the news to us. I don't think there's any really good way to break that type of news to anyone, so I don't fault the doctors or anything like that. I will say they handed us this informational sheet. It's a single white piece of paper with these bullet points on it. I will say I wish they kind of did a better job with this, because it's kind of hard as we're giving this piece of paper, and obviously we start reading it, right? And this is basically a bullet point and a list of what to expect your daughter's life to forever. Morbid obesity, short in stature, hyperphagia, as I explained earlier, right? This. I'm starving the entire time to the point where, you know, you read some of these stories where parents are locking foods, kids are, you know, hoarding food, going through the garbage can to get their hands on food. Like, you hear these just, you know, these really tough stories to read online about hyperphagia. You know, intellectual disabilities, supportive living, like she'll never be able to live independently. She'll need, you know, either our help or be put in a home. Infertility, she won't be able to have her own family. I mean, it's just the picture is a very bleak outlook that was like just seared in my mind now, you know, on the 10th day of you know, what was supposed to be this momentous, like this, you know, momentous occasion of my life where, you know, I've gone from being just, you know, Chris the person or a husband to, you know, a father, you know. You know, it was tough, you know, like I never really knew my father. You know, sadly he passed before I had a chance to know him. But as I was getting ready to be a new dad, I had these pictures in my mind of what a father should be like, or what I envisioned my father would have been like with me if he was, able to stick around. And I think Chris touched on some of this earlier, like, with the role of the father, a fixer. I think you illustrated that beautifully, right? We have this image in our mind, like we solve problems, we fix them. I'm gonna be there. I'm gonna be present for my daughter. I'm gonna take care of it. But immediately, first battle, right? My first test as a father, it's you're not gonna fix this one. You can't. It's out of your hands. There's nothing you can do. I think a best way to sum it up for me, if I had to in a sentence, would be that night. My image of my life was my daughter will suffer every single day of her life, and I'm going to watch her suffer helplessly until I die. And that's basically what was going through my mind. My wife had similar, but had her own emotions and her own thought processes. And, I won't, she's always elaborated and willing to share on those when she's discussed and talked about it. But, together, we're just like, we want to go home. They were insistent about keeping her. We're like, no, we want to just bring our little girl home. And we packed up and we went home. And, we did the typical day. We had 48, 72 hours. But, we went through all of, I think, similar questions like a lot of other parents go through, or other patients maybe, why us? How did this happen to us? It's not supposed to happen to us. We had this whole plan and all this stuff laid out, and we had our own pity party, so to speak. I think one of the reasons why my wife is my wife. I was attracted to. She's an incredibly driven individual. I like to think I am myself, and one of the reasons why she chose me as well as a partner. But we made this conscious decision, right? We can sit here, we can keep sulking, we can keep asking all these questions on how did this happen to us. Inevitably, though, we're going to end up in the same place, and it's not going to help our daughter. It's not going to help our situation as a family. So we decided to, get busy, get working. Once again, I'm going to, steal Chris's stuff. We decided to fight, and Tintin, right? You make this decision to fight. So, we're like, all right, well, we got to arm ourselves. We got to know this disease. We got to know it in and out. We got, we got to know what's coming up and prepare ourselves for when those things arise to tackle them. Like any motivated and great husband, I told my wife to get on the internet and get us information and then send it on to me and I'll look it through. Not just kidding. Like, she's always a couple steps ahead of me. And the next morning, my inbox was flooded with materials, about, from her about, all the publications out there, advanced, whatever treatments there are, doctors we need to be making, specialists that we need to be making appointments with, things we needed to start doing. We started going through it, reading it, we had a kind of idea how to tackle it. Our previous background, we've always worked in the healthcare industry. We're both, have software engineering backgrounds, and we're always building clinical trial tools and other types of like drug information systems, adverse event systems. So we had an idea about the drug pipeline and FDA and stuff, which helped a little bit. But just to kind of move forward and keep things going, it wasn't until my wife actually found an online community, a closed community of other people, other caregivers that were, caring for children with PWS, and that we started to see kind of this disconnect between everything we've been reading and consuming online, right, and what these parents were sharing about their lived and current experiences online, and not that they were sharing things so much differently. There were still the trials and the struggles, and you read some stories that really pull and tear at the heartstrings. But there was also like a lot of hope, a lot of positive, a lot of things that parents were trying to, and felt like they were reporting on positive effects. Things like diet or supplements. Talking like my child is walking. I was able to get my child walking within a year. It didn't take the 2 years or the typical year. But just also the fact that they were, enjoying their child, right? They were taking this moment to enjoy the fact that I do have a child. We have this disease and this thing we're dealing with, but we have this child. But like I said, once again, like it's just this incredible disconnect. Like I said, like, it's rare disease and you only get so much information, and that information might not be up to date, right? And you're newly diagnosed, whether you're a caregiver or a patient, you're just like, I'm just trying to tread water here and keep my head above water and any information you can get. So, the more up to date and guidelines you can get, the better. So, I mean, this community was, a big uplift for us, especially my wife, fighting this and then sharing this back, and also just I think the support network had. And that's kind of like a lot of and that's basically where we led into Trend Community and what inspired us to go in there, because we saw the value of what the other patient voices, the other community voices did for us, and how it brought us hope and stuff. And presently, my daughter, I mean, she has her struggles. We have our challenges. Sometimes you have to pick and choose on any given day what thing you're gonna tackle and try to get, because a lot of it's for us, it's hard for us, but we also have to remember we have a little girl too, and she's dealing with this and all these things herself, right? Her shot every night, the half a dozen pills she's taking every day, modified, her modified diet and all this, but her resilience and the way she just goes about it it amazes me and inspires me. And she's not that sheet of paper that I was given, that my wife and I were given on October 22nd. I mean, she's so much more. She's so much better. I mean, she's this little adult that, pokes at me and sasses me and has a sense of humor. And, like I said, there's just so much more to that. And this sheet of paper that, I hope that newly diagnosed parents are able to realize that right away as well. And they maybe don't have to go through some of these emotional hurdles that we've gone through already.
All right, Christopher, thank you for sharing. David, we're almost out of time here, but I would like for you guys just real quickly, just like 60-second. David, what would help you in your part of the world with your rare disease options that you have, or what are you striving for to try to get through?
I think it'd be good for to have the same international guidelines for my rare disease around the world. It's different in Europe as it compared to USA. I mean, maybe I don't know the exact reasons for why that. I think there's more than one reason, but yeah, I think the same guidelines for around the world would be great. More support for families really is important as well. Counselling or also counselling offered for families who are going through people with a rare disease in their family level, watching them. They need support as well, really. So I think those are things that I and speaking to others would kind of feel the same about, really, in my part of the world.
All right, 10-10, real quick. What I know you talked about a lot of things already and what you're striving for, but what do you see as might be the number one help for you?
Well, what is crucial for me is to have pharmaceutical industry that understands or that is leading rare diseases in other parts of the world to come and support Africa, because Africa at a regional level and at a country level, nothing so far is being done. So when there are no resources for people that want to push the agenda, we really need support from pharmaceuticals overseas, whether it's in the Americas or in Europe, so that we can push the rare disease agenda and stop calling rare diseases a diagnosis for the haves, and stop labeling rare diseases as things that come from overseas, but let's understand in Africa that these are genetics and they are also there from an African setup. So pharmaceuticals overseas, pharmaceuticals in the first world should also give a certain budget for the third world to pursue the rare disease agenda. Thank you, Jeff.
So thank you. So Chris Verlona, I know that you and I have talked about some of the things that you've had to, that you're fighting for. What do you see here in this world in the U.S.?
Yeah, it's challenging for sure. Being a part of a solution, or trying to have a voice in a solution. For sure that the challenge is, obviously now we can see from Tintin, it's kind of like the same. You have pharmaceutical companies creating treatments or and things that then they go elsewhere for more money, or they go for more notoriety or for more access. It's challenging, but I took your questions, Jeff, to heart, and I asked people not only in pharmaceutical companies but family foundations, as well as people really pushing the needle, and the commonalities is funding, the lack of funding, the lack of awareness for these typical diseases, and to make our governments aware that more research dollars are needed so that we can constantly attack these problems that are rising in our children. But there's so many people in line, Jeff. There's everybody wants a piece of that, and it's hard, I would imagine, at the level of government to discern who gets what. So it's just the access, the screenings, big pharma moving in, not helping privately funded people, having their own agendas. You could sit here and you could talk all day long about the problems, but we need a solution. We need to figure out how to collectively begin to have a solution that is unifiable for the children, not for the bottom line. And I understand you need money to continue this process, but there's a bigger risk and stake involved, and that's human life. And I think that if we put human life first before publications and bottom lines and making money, I think we'd get a lot farther along the lines. That's just my opinion. Yeah.
All right, and to round this out, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I can feel it. I feel some of the same things too, and with it. So, Christopher in Philadelphia, just in 60 seconds, give us what your thoughts are.
Well, I think some of the big challenges for rare disease is getting optimal care, right? Getting that support structure in place for your family, that you have the local experts there, right? And then affording and accessing therapies. Most rare diseases, and obviously Chris has come on this, is don't have an approved therapy for them, right? So one is, how do you start getting approved therapies? I think regulators or regulatory agencies need to start, allowing for more innovative clinical trial designs, right? You have a lot of families that are using off-label drugs and paying for that out of pocket because they don't have a therapy, and drug manufacturers or researchers are having an impossible time assembling cohorts for that, because, it's unrealistic to expect a family that's using a drug off-label, right, to want to wash out their child from a drug that they're perceiving to have benefit from, right, to go into a placebo-controlled trial, right, with the risk of saying, well, I might be in that placebo arm and I'm going to lose the benefit of this drug, right? And now, especially think of it for a rare disease with a low life expectancy. In terms of optimal care, right, we travel from Florida for endocrine, Houston for a neurologist, so on top of the medical bills, we have travel expenses to get to our medical bills, and that's just not affordable, for a family, which I think, resonates with some of the funding aspects that, Chris was touching on as well. And, what do we have to do to get more experts? And do we need to, how do we, maybe as a community, as a country, as a population, inspire that next generation of medical school students, right, that are coming in that actually want to focus in on rare disease or take up a few rare disease, or when I know some of these research institutes, our health schools are trying to have some of these programs and do that, but my experience, I don't see the medical students really engage or feel inspired. When I go to these events, it's a few that are engaging, right? How do we inspire them? How do we make them want to actually fight the fight with us, or care? So those are some of my thoughts.
Awesome. Guys, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. We're going to have to go ahead and wrap up here, but each of you sharing your story, your passion, Christopher and I have talked. There's just some days, do you want to pick up that mantle? Do you want to put back on your armor? Do you want to pick up your sword and go fight the monster that's out there? And there are times that when you come home and you shut that door, and maybe it's just you and your wife, maybe it's just you, and the armor comes off and everything comes down, that you're just like, damn it, tomorrow I got to do it again. So guys, thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing your story. It means the world. Everybody will get a copy of the recording, obviously, to post. And with that, I appreciate you all from the bottom of my heart, no matter where you are in the world. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Folks, coming up on the main stage in just a few minutes is that we have another panel that is going to be talking about, the physician best practices in supporting life transitions for people living in the rare community. So please join us for that panel here in just a few minutes. Thank you all. Take care.